Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is, well, it's all about getting you informed fast. We're jumping into what it takes to start a new company in India.
That's right. Specifically, we're looking at incorporating a private limited company, or PLC.
Exactly. You've shared some really helpful source material on PLC registration, and we're going to pull out the key things you need to know. I'm actually pretty excited to dig into this with you.
And it seems, based on this material, the PLC is really presented as the go-to option. The Companies Act's 2013 points to it as maybe the simplest and most recommended structure, especially if you're planning to grow.
Okay, let's break that down. For you listening, if you're just starting, what are the absolute must-haves according to these sources?
Right. The core thing is you need a minimum of 2 directors.
Yeah.
And 2 shareholders as well.
2 of each. Got it.
And here's a key detail. One of those directors, at least one, must be an Indian resident and an Indian citizen.
Okay, so that Indian connection for a director is essential. Now, why go this route? Why a PLC? What are the upsides highlighted in the sources?
This is where it gets interesting. The material lists some big ones. First up, separate legal entity status, meaning the company is its own person in the eyes of the law, separate from you, the owner.
Right.
Which leads directly to the second major benefit, limited liability for the shareholders.
Okay, that sounds important. Limited liability. So your personal stuff is safe.
Basically, yes.
Yeah.
Your personal assets are generally protected from the company's debts or legal issues. It really limits your personal risk.
That protection sounds like a really big deal when you're starting out. What else?
Well, it also makes raising money significantly easier, whether that's loans, debt, or selling shares, equity.
Yeah, and internationally, too.
Yes, the sources specifically mention that. Raising funds from abroad is smoother. Plus, PLCs can register for the Startup India initiative.
Which comes with benefits, right? Like tax breaks.
Potentially, yes. You might qualify for income tax deductions on profits. If not, the standard corporate tax rates mentioned are somewhere between 15% and 30%, depending on things like turnover. But probably the most surprising thing, honestly, that the sources really stress, especially in the FAQ section,
Yeah.
there's no minimum capital requirement.
Wait, really? No minimum investment needed just to get the company registered?
Exactly. Zero mandated capital to start. The sources frame this as removing a huge traditional barrier. You don't need a big pile of cash just to get the legal structure set up.
Wow, okay. That changes things. So if it's flexible on capital and has these benefits, how do you actually, register one? Is it still a mountain of paperwork?
Actually, no. Another key point from the material is that the whole process is online now.
Completely online, no need to physically go anywhere.
Nope. It's all electronic. You just need scanned copies of your documents.
Okay, so what kind of documents are we talking about?
Well, for the directors, you'll need photos and ID proof, like Aadhaar or PAN cards if you're resident, passports, driving licenses work too, and address proof, like a recent utility bill.
And for the company's office address?
Similar proof.
Yeah.
Utility bill, or maybe a notarized rental agreement if you're leasing, or a sale deed if you own it. Plus, you'll need a no objection certificate, an NOC, from the property owner.
Right, the NOC. I also saw mention of a DSC, digital signature certificate.
Yes, crucial, the DSC. The material explains it's the online equivalent of your physical signature. It's legally valid for signing the electronic forms.
Makes sense. So you got your document scanned, get the DSC. How long does this online setup usually take?
The sources suggest typically between 10 days and maybe a month.
Okay.
It really depends on getting all the documents right the first time and, how quickly the government processes things at their end.
And the costs involved, besides maybe professional help.
The main government fees mentioned are stamp duty, that's based on the Indian Stamp Act, and charges for filing the key company documents, the MOA and AOA.
The memorandum and articles of association, like the company rule book.
Exactly. They define what the company does and how it's run internally.
Okay, so PLC registration is the core. Does the material mention anything else you might need to register for?
It does, yeah. It depends heavily on your specific business, of course. But things like GST for taxes, maybe PF registration if you hire employees, professional tax, depending on the state.
Local licenses, too.
Potentially, yes. And if it's manufacturing or you have a lot of staff, there's labor law compliance to think about.
So other things can follow. Let's just quickly recap those key numbers from the FAQs again.
Sure. Key takeaways. No minimum capital, minimum 2 shareholders, maximum 200, minimum 2 directors, maximum 15.
And 1 director has to be.
An Indian citizen and resident, absolutely.
Got it. This deep dive really makes the path clearer for you if you're thinking about a private limited company in India.
Definitely. And while the sources do note that, yes, there's more compliance involved compared to, say, an OPC or an LLP.
A one-person company or limited liability partnership.
Right. But those core benefits, the separate identity, the limited liability, easier funding, government scheme access, they make the PLC a really popular choice, especially if you're aiming for growth.
It really seems geared towards enabling that growth and attracting investment. Seeing it's all online, no minimum capital needed up front, it feels quite accessible.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to chew on.
Yeah.
Given that there's no mandated initial capital and you can do the entire registration digitally from anywhere, how does that flexibility really change the game? How does it fundamentally alter those traditional hurdles to starting and scaling a business in a huge dynamic market like India?
Definitely something to consider as you plan your next move. Thanks for diving deep with us today.